Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And for this week, we're going to be focusing on the Xbox One. Now, the Xbox One was a very polarizing console for a long time, but when all is said and done, it has a lot of really good games. And the cool thing about Xbox is that not only can these be played on the Xbox One, but every one of these games can be played on the Xbox Series through backwards compatibility, and oftentimes, these games look even better on the Xbox Series, so do keep that in mind. With that said, whether you're playing on the Xbox Series or the Xbox One, this console has a lot of great games, so today we're going to be taking a look at the 25 best games available on the Xbox One, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. And to start this list off, I have the newly released Tales of Arise. The Tales of franchise is a long-running JRPG, but with Tales of Arise, it really just takes this franchise to the next level. While the Tales of series has been a little bit hit or miss in the past, with Tales of Arise, Bandai Namco did take some extra time to develop this game. They also switched to the Unreal Engine, and this game looks and plays excellent. This is exactly what this franchise needed, and it's now legitimately a AAA JRPG. It does have fun, action-driven gameplay where you fight alongside a party of members where you can use all sorts of different combos. It also has interesting characters as well as an intriguing story to follow. For fans asking for more high-quality JRPGs on the Xbox, well, Tales of Arise is exactly that. And here I have Rocket League, which was one of the biggest surprises for me last generation. This is a game that just seemingly came out of nowhere and exploded onto the scene. And I mean, when you first see this game, it's just some kind of car game combined with soccer. It seems a little strange on paper, but it really is one of the most fun games that you can pick up and play, and that's kind of the thing when it comes to Rocket League. It's one of those rare games that almost anybody can pick it up and have fun, but it also has a very high skill ceiling. Rocket League very much is a sports game, and if you want to get good, you're going to have to practice, as this game has some really in-depth mechanics. Whether you're a newcomer or a veteran, though, I think Rocket League is here to stay for years and years, as it truly is timeless. Sea of Thieves is one of those games that just continues to get better and better as time goes on. This is a game, when it first launched, it was heavily criticized for its lack of content, but now that's a thing of the past, as they have continued to update this game more and more throughout the years, and it really shows why it is such a unique and thrilling experience. Sea of Thieves really plays like nothing else in the market, especially when it comes to those naval battles that can be an absolute rush. But really, that was always the case. The core part of Sea of Thieves was always good, but now, since that initial launch, they've just added so much content. You can go fishing, there's a ton of different quests, you can have pets, you can go on raid style of battles, there's a competitive side to Sea of Thieves, and there's even a single player story as well. For that matter, they've even managed to bring over Pirates of the Caribbean to Sea of Thieves. Crash Bandicoot is finally back in a big way. Not only did we get that Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy and then also Crash Team Racing, but now we also have Crash Bandicoot 4. This is a direct sequel to that original Crash trilogy, and they took that formula and they absolutely ran with it. The Crash games have always been unique within the 3D platforming genre, and they took that original formula and they expanded on it with all kinds of new mechanics. They do this by giving you new abilities in the form of masks. You also have new characters in this game, which has their own abilities to play around with, and the level design in Crash 4 is top of its class. Hellblade is a game that blew me away in so many different regards. When you look at this game, it screams AAA. It looks the part, it's well designed, the voice actress Melina Jorgens did an outstanding job in this game, and the facial animations are some of the best that I've seen in any video game to date. The crazy thing about this game, though, is that it was actually made by a small team over at Ninja Theory of about 15 to 20 developers. When I first heard that, that took me by surprise, because Hellblade can go toe-to-toe with any big AAA game on the market. And not only does its visuals look great, but I think it's a lot of fun as well with that hack-and-slash combat. It's a little simplistic, but gets the job done, and it also has some interesting puzzles. And then there's the story that touches up on mental illnesses. This is one that has to be experienced, and with that said, I would actually recommend playing this one with a good pair of headphones as you hear all of the inner voices within Senua's mind. And here I have the combination of a couple of classic JRPG franchises being Final Fantasy and then Dragon Quest. Now, with the more modern Final Fantasy games, they've kind of went into more of that action-driven style of gameplay. You can really see that with the flashy combat system that Final Fantasy 15 uses. Now, when Final Fantasy 15 first launched, this game was heavily criticized, but within time, they did add more and more content to this game. They fixed some of the story elements, and it ended up turning out to be a pretty good game. It also looks absolutely gorgeous. I really like the art design of this game, and I think it's just overall a lot of fun. However, if you are looking for more of that classic 90s JRPG style of experience, you have Dragon Quest XI, which stuck to its roots. This game very much plays out like a 90s JRPG. You partake on a grand adventure, meet a colorful cast of characters along the way, and beat all kinds of baddies in turn-based combat. It also has a timeless art style to it, which looks great on a good TV setup. Yakuza is another franchise that made its way over to Xbox last generation, and this one sits among the very best story-driven experiences. When you first look at these games, yeah, they come off as a little goofy, and in a lot of ways they really are, but the overarching stories in these games are masterpieces, to put it short. They can make you laugh, they can make you cry, and they always have you on the edge of their seat with all of the twists and turns along the way. Now, as far as the gameplay goes, these are like beat-em-up style of games with RPG elements. It can be a little goofy as you're basically a one-man army, but it is always a lot of fun. Now, if you're a big Western RPG fan, Xbox is starting to become a bit of a RPG powerhouse. Not only do they have Obsidian Entertainment with games like The Outer Worlds, but they also have Bethesda with games like Skyrim and Fallout 4. Both of these games do play similar, which kind of makes sense considering Obsidian Entertainment did work on Fallout New Vegas in the past, and they really just took that formula and then just kind of ran with it. I'd actually say that this is kind of a combination between Mass Effect and Fallout, and they just put it together and made an extraordinary game. There's plenty of player choice in this game. The writing is done very well. It's got several fun and humorous companions, and it also has fun combat as well. Now, like I said before, you can swap this out with Fallout 4 though if you would like, which instead of you traveling planet to planet, instead you travel the wastelands in an apocalyptic world. Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider franchise is one of the most recognizable video game mascots of all time, but she's actually went through a bit of a change with the rebooted trilogy, and while there's always going to be differing opinions when it comes to the design, these games play and look excellent. The new Tomb Raider games do take some inspiration from the Uncharted franchise, and I say that in the best possible way. It mixes in assortment of gameplay, including platforming, there's puzzle elements, there's shooting sections, and at times you can even use your stealth-based elements, and Tomb Raider even has a bit of a survival component as well, each of which is impressively done very well, and that includes the story on top of that. The Tomb Raider games tells a gripping and personal story for Lara Croft as you see the evolution of the Tomb Raider. Xbox fans know Remedy Entertainment very well as they've made some great Xbox games over the years, including Alan Wake, they made Quantum Break, and now, most recently, they've made Control, which might be their best yet. Control is a game that kind of plays out like a big AAA 3D Metroidvania style of game as you just kind of watch the world and building morph and change around you, and it is quite stunning to watch in motion for that matter. And because you have access to all kinds of different supernatural abilities, you truly feel as if you're superhuman in this game, and it just feels good to play. If you do find yourself liking this game though, you should definitely check out some of their other games, being Alan Wake, which just got a remaster, as well as Quantum Break. And here I grouped a couple of competitive multiplayer shooters being Overwatch and Rainbow Six Siege, though actually both of these do play quite a bit different from one another. Now with Overwatch, this is a hero shooter with each character playing vastly different than one another. You have your DPS characters for damage, your support class for healing, and then you also have tanks to kind of hold the front line. Each character has their own unique abilities, and you really have to work as a team to accomplish your goal. The design of each character is also brilliant, both in terms of game design as well as art design. Now this game is very team-oriented though, which can kind of cause some frustration among fans if somebody's not doing their job on the team. And really the same can kind of be said with Rainbow Six Siege, as this is yet another hero-style shooter, though this one is more on the tactical side of things. Instead of focusing on abilities, you instead focus on gadgets and technology. Rainbow Six Siege is a little bit slower paced, and you're really going to have to listen to your surroundings and work as a team to kind of locate your enemies and find all of the traps that they have planned for you across the building. Now, one of the more addictive games in this list would be Monster Hunter World, which exploded onto the scene. And once you play it, it's really easy to figure out why. I feel like this is a game that really makes you feel like you're in a lived-in, breathed-in ecosystem. The monsters in this game feel so lifelike, and not only do they interact with you, but they interact with the environment and also other creatures within the world. They all have their own unique behavior, which makes the hunt even more thrilling. All of this would mean nothing, though, if it wasn't for its excellent combat. You have various weapons to play around with that have their own upgrade paths, and that's something else about Monster Hunter World. This game has a ton of content, and you can easily put hundreds of hours in the Monster Hunter World. And then, just as an added little bonus, this is also a great cooperative game that you can play up to 4 players online. There's several good fighting games in the market, but there's none that I had more fun with than Killer Instinct. Now, when this game first released, it launched with only 6 characters, but throughout the generation and one developer later, it finished off with nearly 30 characters overall. Each character was crazy over the top and completely played different than everybody else. And for that matter, the design of this game is just outstanding. I mean, this is a game that you can play as a toad, you can play as a dinosaur wearing a cheerleader outfit, you can play as a killer robot, a vampire, a mummy, and just so many more. Everything is just so over the top, but it's also a very smart fighting game. One thing about Killer Instinct is that not only does it have strong fighting game mechanics, but it also has a unique mechanic being the combo breaker. Because the combo breaker, you're not only just going to focus on insanely long combos, but you're also playing mind games, as at any time your opponent can break your combo. This just adds a whole new dimension to fighting games, and truthfully, Killer Instinct easily goes down as my favorite fighting game of all time. You don't often see a lot of these fast-paced first-person shooters anymore, and it almost feels like a retro style of gameplay, but with Doom Eternal, it brings these games back in a big way. Doom Eternal, from a mechanical standpoint, is easily one of the best first-person shooters, not just of recent years, but really of all time. This game handles amazingly well. The guns feel good, your movement is fast and precise, the platforming is also surprisingly really well done in Doom Eternal also, and you also have to play smart in this game. There's a real strategy when it comes to Doom Eternal. You're not just going to be able to go in there and mindlessly shoot everything, but you're going to have to think on your feet and fast to clear a room of all of your enemies. One franchise that has really surprised me in recent years would be Nier. When the original Nier came out, it wasn't exactly well received, but with Nier Automata, that kind of changed everything. Honestly, if I just had to describe this game in just one word, it would be masterpiece. The hack and slash style of gameplay is fun, the world is mesmerizing, the music is absolutely amazing, and it's really some of my favorite in any video game ever. And then there's also its story, which is fascinating. Now, that is something that I will say with this game, you do have to reach the end credits multiple times before you see its official ending. It does not end on those first credits. Each playthrough will be different, so do keep that in mind. Now, there's also Nier Replicant Remaster, which I would also highly recommend. I don't think it's as good as Automata because it becomes a little bit more repetitive, but both these games, again, are masterpieces. You know, typically, I'm not really a big fan of roguelike games where if you die, you have to start all the way back from the beginning. It's just not really my thing, but there has been a few standout hits in recent years, none better, though, than Hades. There's a reason that this game has won so many Game of the Year awards. It's got this fun and addictive gameplay loop where you try to escape hell by choosing your own path. Each time you clear a room, you're faced with a choice on what path you want to take and how you want to upgrade your character. That's where the strategy comes in, and even though there is a little bit of luck involved with this is why each playthrough feels completely different. It also helps that the combat in this game is insanely fun, but where this game really took me by surprise is with its writing. Somehow they managed to make you feel as if each death is almost a reward because you get to talk with the characters in the universe one more time, and it does have a really interesting overarching story. And in order to see the story to completion, you're going to have to beat this game at least 10 times, and that is no easy task. Capcom has been knocking it out of the park here recently when it comes to the Resident Evil franchise. Now, they've been doing this in two different ways, one being with their remakes. So far, they've remade 1, 2, and 3, though they are planning on doing a Resident Evil 4 remake as well, but these remakes so far have been nothing short of phenomenal. My personal favorite would easily be Resident Evil 2, which gets that horror vibe just perfectly. But then there's also the newer Resident Evil games, being Resident Evil 7 and then Resident Evil Village. Now, these games are a little bit different than other Resident Evil games because these ones are actually set in first-person view. Interestingly enough, though, a lot of people do view this as more of an immersive experience, but it still shares the same formula as classic Resident Evil games with that Metroidvania style of gameplay. Not only is there terrifying creatures around every corner, especially when it comes to Resident Evil Village, which has creatures such as werewolves and vampires as well, but just like the classic Resident Evil games, there's going to be plenty of puzzles to solve along the way. It really becomes a great mix of exploration, puzzles, action, story, and just overall terror. And for you racing fans out there, I have the Forza franchise, both being Forza Motorsports and then Forza Horizon. Now, it really just depends on what type of racing game you like, with Forza Motorsport being that simulation racer for fans of that realistic approach. With each turn, you're going to have to use precision and strategy to best your opponent, while in Forza Horizon, these are actually open-world racing games that takes a little bit more of an arcade approach. Honestly, though, I'm not sure if I've ever had more fun with a racing game outside of kart racers than I've had with Forza Horizon, especially some of the newer entries like Forza Horizon 4, and now we have Horizon 5 as well. The worlds in these games are massive, they're fun to explore, they have different biomes, and they are just brilliant racers, really just some of the greatest racing games of all time, and that really goes both for Forza Motorsport as well as Forza Horizon. Right now would be the golden era of Metroidvanias, and in recent years we've gotten some of the best the genre has ever seen, including Hollow Knight and then Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Now, even though both of these are Metroidvanias, they do play a little bit different than one another, with Hollow Knight focusing more on combat. This is really the Dark Souls of Metroidvania games, with that risk-reward factor. It's got a dark and gloomy world, and just those brilliant boss encounters. Hollow Knight is both atmospheric as well as challenging. And then you have Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which actually focuses more on its platforming. And I always say this, and I truly do mean it, but Ori's platforming is so good that it can stand toe-to-toe with some of the best platformers on the market. With it being a Metroidvania, though, it has a bit more depth to it, especially as you add more abilities throughout the game. Its platforming, though, feels tight and responsive, and it can be a real challenge, especially when it comes to its boss sequences. This game is also extremely gorgeous to watch in motion, as you can probably already see, and it even has an emotionally engaging story. The 3D platforming genre came back in a big way this year, releasing some of the best the genre has ever seen, being Psychonauts 2 and then It Takes Two. Both of these games are highly creative 3D platformers. On one side, you have It Takes Two, which is a mandatory cooperative game with asymmetrical gameplay. It's all about working together, but where this game really shines is with its insane amount of creativity. Each level plays vastly different from the last, and it's just going to surprise you time and time again. It also has a surprisingly deep story, and I can also say the same thing with Psychonauts 2. Psychonauts 2 actually focuses on mental illnesses, and it actually has one of the more interesting stories in games in recent years, especially with all of the quirky characters that you meet along the way. Psychonauts 2, though, is more of a collect-a-thon 3D platformer with various abilities that you can unlock throughout the game. The world in this game begs to be explored as you find each and every collectible, and not only do I think that this is a masterpiece, but I think it goes down as one of the best collect-a-thon 3D platformers of all time. From Software has basically created their own genre of games with the Dark Souls franchise. That's how impactful these games have been. They offer that risk-reward style of gameplay with their gloomy worlds. They are incredibly challenging. They have brilliant boss encounters. They have this interconnected world that kind of plays out like a Metroidvania style of game. And even though these games are challenging, you always find yourself coming back for more. And no, not because you're into some kind of sick punishment or anything like that, but because the game design is just overall really good. I wouldn't even really explain these games as exceptionally hard, but rather just challenging, and anytime you complete a challenge, that's always rewarding all on its own. Now, you also have Sekiro, which is a little bit different. This is another From Software game, though this one focuses a little bit more on its parry-based system. It is a little bit faster paced, and it has a little bit more verticality to it, but if you want another challenging game, you can also check out Sekiro. One thing that I really don't think Xbox gets enough credit for is making these games that I would consider to be the full package. And what I mean by that is a game that has a good single player component. It's got good cooperative gameplay, and then it's also a good competitive game. And Microsoft actually has a few of these, one being Gears of War. Gears of War really has everything going for it. It's got an entertaining story with interesting characters. It's got that cooperative mode, both in terms of its single player, and then you also have Horde mode where you can take on wave after wave of enemies. And then you also have its competitive side, which is something that I've always felt was just truly special. There's really nothing else in the market that feels like Gears of War. Its third-person shooting mechanics not only is unique, but it's also incredibly in-depth. Truthfully, when it comes to shooting mechanics, I think Gears of War is just the best third-person shooter, period. Now, speaking of games that are the full package, we also need to talk about Xbox's flagship franchise, being Halo. Halo's always sat at the top when it comes to first-person shooters, whether that be with its single-player campaign, its multiplayer, its cooperative game mode, or even with Forge, where you can actually create your own games. And with Halo the Master Chief Collection all in one bundle, you're going to be able to experience most of the mainline Halo franchise. Not only do you get the Halo 2 remake with more modern visuals, but you also get Halo 1, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, Halo Reach, and then Halo 4. That is a lot of content, but also high-quality content. Halo 2 and Halo 3 being my favorites within the franchise are still just as fun today as they ever was, and it just kind of shows you the timeless gameplay that Halo has. And well, if you do end up liking the Master Chief Collection, keep in mind that Halo Infinite is also set to release for the Xbox One and Xbox Series next month on December 8th of 2021. In a lot of these open world games, it almost seems like they have to make some sacrifices in order to get the worlds big and expansive, but with Red Dead Redemption 2, it almost contradicts that. This game is set in the Wild Wild West, and not only is its world massive, but there are a ton of things to do. Whether you want to fish, hunt, rob banks, or whatever, you have plenty of things to do within its world. The story itself is also highly entertaining with plenty of twists and turns along the way, and I have to really applaud the voice acting in this game. They really did a great job with that, and by the end of this game, even though you do play as a bad, quote-unquote bad character, you really find yourself drawn to this character the more you play throughout the game. Now, the one thing that always stands out to me when it comes to this game, though, is its animations. Just like The Last of Us Part 2, they are so meticulous with every little movement in this game. It does make it a little slower pace, but wow, is it impressive. And at the number one spot, of course, I have none other than The Witcher 3. This game has debuted at the number one spot on my list several times in the past, and there's a reason for that. This really is one of the all-time greatest RPGs ever made for its story, its world, its characters, the player's decisions, and its side missions. It does it just all so extraordinarily well. Just kind of as an example, some of the side missions in this game are just so interesting that I actually think that they are better than some mainline stories within other games. That's how good it is. And then when it comes to the player decisions, when it comes to The Witcher 3, it actually puts you in a position to make some seriously difficult decisions that you're going to long think about well after you finish playing the game. It's not always so straightforward, and a lot of times you're really just picking between the lesser evils. And then there's also the unique combat within this game. It's got this mix of hack and slash style gameplay with light magic, and it just kind of feels like its own thing. I mean, really, there's just certain games that fans talk about for decades and decades. You take a look back at games during the 90s, it's RPGs such as Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, 9, and the list just kind of goes on. Those games have kind of stood the test of time, and I think The Witcher 3 is going to be one of those games. Fans are going to be talking about this game 10, 15, 20 years from now because it really is that good. Anyways, though, that's it for this list, but if I forgot to mention any of your favorite games, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.